allocate money so that every American, no matter what your financial circumstance, would have access to the vaccine when it's available. It's not available yet. They're estimating that it could be available in 18 months or so. So you let me know what you think. Let me know what you think. Should the vaccine be made available to everyone without cost? And in the second hour, we're going to be talking with a rich panel. We're going to have a rich panel in this first hour about politics. You saw Senator Bernie Sanders yesterday give a speech in which he affirmed that he is still in the race. And I think he was responding to Congressman Clyburn from South Carolina, whose endorsement was key in putting Joe Biden over the top in South Carolina. And so, and even though politically they have their differences, because Congressman Clyburn is really a moderate, while Bernie Sanders is a progressive. So he said, okay, I am still in this race and I will be at the debate this weekend, and I have some questions to ask of my opponent, who is my friend. So you let me know what you think. Should he stay in the race? I personally think that he should, because he's running for so much, not just for the youth, as he said during his press conference. He's running for a whole lot of people. He's running for some ideas. I've seen this before. I saw this during the Jackson campaign in 1988. There was a point during the campaign in which it looked like he was the clear front runner, and he could have had the nomination. That was after his substantial win in Michigan, and the establishment came in on Reverend Jackson too, and machines didn't work, voting machines and all sorts of stuff. Whatever. The thing is, he lived to fight another day, because he knew that it was about much more than him. He was getting not only black people and women and people of color and poor people at the negotiating table, at the power table. He was also, more than that, getting progressive ideas to the table. Because we can see, as we look at our political spectrum now, that you have moderates of all colors, you have conservatives of all colors, and you have progressives of all colors. And I think we need to be very clear in our politics. So we're going to talk about that today. But first, what about this coronavirus? What about it? What about it? The World Health Organization says the coronavirus is a pandemic, an outbreak the likes of which we have never seen before. Never seen before. So, Lady B, let's get some of these headlines out the way, because we have a tremendous panel who are going to talk with us about it. We're going to have a lawyer who's also in civil rights, and we're going to have a doctor, a lawyer who's also a minister, because I feel that, we've got to pull all of these different disciplines into this discussion, because to me this is a moral issue. I don't care how much money you have, how little money you have, if you have no money at all. I think that there's some things that all Americans, no matter what our backgrounds, need. And if there is a virus that could keep you from getting the coronavirus or anything, I mean, the polio vaccine, you and I missed that, but, that became a real issue. Everybody got it, and that's just it, for the public good. Particularly since this is communicable, you have to have social distancing so that you don't catch it. And now we have an NBA player. Oh my goodness, there's so many little headlines. So let's get right to it, everybody. The World Health Organization has declared the coronavirus, COVID-19, a pandemic. There are 118,000 cases, according to this CNN report, more than 4,000 deaths. According to the World Health Organization, the virus has found a foothold on every continent except Antarctica. The World Health Organization Director General, Tedros Adhanom, said, quote, "We have never before seen a pandemic sparked by a coronavirus, and we have never before seen a pandemic that can be controlled at the same time." Wow. And he continued, if countries detect, test, treat, isolate, trace, and mobilize their people in the response, those with a handful of novel coronavirus cases can prevent those cases from becoming clusters, and those clusters becoming community transmission. Are we doing that in the United States? Global pandemic, everybody's changing how we live. Indeed, in Italy, mortgage payments will be suspended all across the country as part of measures to soften the economic blow of the coronavirus on households, according to Italy's deputy economic minister, Laura Castelli, said, we will be suspending mortgage payments. If it comes to that, do you think we should do that here? Would they do that here? Mm. It's not unheard of in Italy. Some small businesses and families, according to the BBC, were given time off during the financial crisis before having to repay. So we're hoping that some measures will be taken here in the United States because people are really going to be struggling. What about those people who are not going to be able to work remotely? What kind of relief will they get? What about that? I think we need to think about that, everybody, because everybody deserves some relief and everybody deserves uh, protection. President Trump, in his speech last night, announced that the United States would temporarily suspend most travel from the European Union as America reckons with the spread of the coronavirus and the White House grapples with the severity of the situation. The restrictions, which would begin on Friday and last for 30 days, would not apply to U.S. citizens or travelers from the UK. The restrictions would apply to most foreign nationals who've been in the 26 countries um, uh, in different areas of China, and he made that announcement last night. Many in the European Union are pushing back on this. What do you think about that? As the U.S. coronavirus toll rises to 37. Italy again, they've ordered all shops, bars, and restaurants to close. Wow. After the coronavirus outbreak rose by 31% in a space of 24 hours. I wonder what's happening in the United States because we're not really testing here, are we? No, so we don't really know. Oh my goodness, what is happening? And Tom Hanks and his wife Rita Wilson, they tested positive for the coronavirus. Now they are in Australia. He tweeted that out yesterday. The 63-year-old Academy Award-winning actor is currently on the Gold Coast of Australia. Um, there's a movie about Elvis Presley, and he said that he and his wife had been feeling a bit tired, felt like they had colds, aches, and pains. They found out that they were positive for the coronavirus. Our prayers and thoughts are with them and for anyone who has the coronavirus. I wonder what are the protocols that they're observing over there. He did say that they are observing protocols. Do we have any? Aside from telling everybody to leave their jobs, the NBA has suspended their season. Now, this is after Rudy Gobert from the Utah Jazz. Um, he was joking a couple of days ago at a press conference because he said, this whole coronavirus thing is exaggerated. So, as a joke in the interview room, they were not in the locker room, the press were in the interview room, he started rubbing the microphones and whatnot. Then he started not feeling well. And now he's got the coronavirus. Yikes. Oh my gosh. Bless his heart. Rudy Gobert, I know he must not feel great about that joke. And we found out here in Chicago, according to the Chicago Sun-Times, the Chicago Department of Public Health workers set up a tent outside Vaughn Occupational High School for conducting health tests amid the coronavirus fears. Noemi Gomez, like most other parents at Vaughn Occupational High School, was concerned when she received a robocall and email Friday evening saying an aide at the school tested positive for the coronavirus. The messages said outreach would start the next day so that every student at this school, including her daughter, could be monitored twice daily by public health officials. She waited and waited and waited. She said, I was waiting Saturday, Sunday, Monday. No one called, no one monitored her daughter. Between Friday and early Monday morning, her daughter, an 18-year-old with mild intellectual disability, developed a fever and cough, which public health officials have identified as two symptoms of COVID-19, the coronavirus. God bless them. What is going on with this? And I tell you, I pulled it in my notes today. I'm going to look through these, Lady B. We need to have knowledge. We need to understand what's going on so that we can feel empowered, because I don't want us to panic. Because now this is going to change even the elections, according to this Guardian report. Everything is up in the air. That is what people are saying. Now we're not going to have rallies, public rallies with Vice President Biden and Senator Sanders. They're going to have a debate without an audience. Well, people will be in the room, but it won't be an audience. That'll be interesting. That kind of debate actually favors Joe Biden. He made the request that he wanted. It's going to be like a fireside chat. I hope it's not. I want a real debate. The coronavirus outbreak threatens to upend the organization of the U.S. presidential election and strike a blow to Donald Trump because of his reliance on big campaign rallies. But guess what? Democrats are, well, they're canceling their rallies, but he's still having his. That's interesting. Don't you think we need to look into that? Bernie Sanders spoke yesterday about staying in the race despite key losses, and that is in the wake of a leading Democrat, or Democratic leader, uh, Congressman Clyburn from South Carolina, who said that if Senator Sanders does not sweep the states, we need to call off the primaries. Give it to Biden. Let's move forward. Let's unify for the fall. Do you agree with that? Call me at 773 9278 773 763 WCPT, and of course Talk 1017 FM in in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Give me a call. Talk 927 FM, Madison, Wisconsin. Give me a call. What do you think about that? Because don't you want to have your primary in Wisconsin? I know I want to have mine next week in Illinois. What, what, what do you think? What do you think about Sanders continuing to press on? What do you think about the NBA season being upended until further notice? What do you think about that? The NCAA tournament, they will be played without an audience. What do you think about that? Mm, I think it's all right with me. But this is going to be an interesting experience, everybody. A very interesting experience. Well, so I have nothing to give you from the Bulls and the Bucks because their season has been postponed until further notice. The Chicago Blackhawks, were triumphant over the Sharks last night, 6-2. Dow still taking a beating, down more than 1,400 points. Nasdaq down more than 390 points. The S&P down 140 points. Today in Chicago, we're expecting a high of 58 degrees. It's going to be balmy, girl, and going to be cloudy though. In Milwaukee, a high of 52 degrees. We're going to have showers there, and showers in Madison, a high of 58 degrees. Spring is in the air, everybody. What do you think about a coronavirus vaccine? Now, they say it's some time away, maybe 18 months, but when it does get here, do you think that everyone should have access to it? Well, Senator Bernie Sanders says absolutely. And Deborah Berger, president of National Nurses United, said, this is insane and cruel. This is just a crazy question. She said, how insane and cruel is it to suggest that we have to figure out how to pay for it, that is the coronavirus vaccine, when we can actually go to war and not ask one question? But to prevent this kind of disease, we have to say, how can we pay for it? Call me. Let me know what you think. We've got Dr. Susan Rodgers, brilliant physician, from the president-elect of the Physicians for a National Health Program, Reverend Attorney Jeanette Wilson, who's also a pastor. She's also a um, senior executive at the Rainbow Push organization, and Attorney Robert Patillo, part of Rainbow Push as well, a civil rights lawyer, brilliant lawyer. But let me start with you, Dr. Susan Rodgers. Welcome back to the show. Tell me, a pandemic, World Health Organization says we have not seen the likes of this before. What does this mean?
Well, good morning, Santina. This is quite frightening, and I mean, it's been 100 years since the pandemic of the flu in 1918. And a pandemic just means that the definition is that there's a worldwide infection. An epidemic is just sort of in a local area, but a pandemic is where you have cases throughout the world, and it is getting worse. And the issue here is that our country was woefully unprepared for this. We still are not testing people. And the fear really is that, do I have the virus? I don't know. I feel fine, but so do a lot of people with the virus. And so we have no way of really knowing at this point how contained this is in this country. It's not contained at all, because we have, other than, gloves and hand washing and things like that to prevent the spread, we don't know who has it. Every time you take a dollar bill out of your wallet. I mean, does that have the virus on it? We know it can live for a certain amount of time on surfaces. So we're just unprepared for this. And I think the very impressive thing about a pandemic is that no one is immune. It doesn't matter what your socioeconomic class is, what your race is, where you live, how much money. I mean, everyone is at risk. And unfortunately, should be a wake-up call to everyone about why we need Medicare for all, because you clearly do not want to prevent people from accessing care they need because they don't have the financial way to do so.
So, what do you think about this call for Senator Sanders and National Nurses United? They say, look, the vaccine should be available to everybody, and it should be, no one should have to pay for it. And Miss Berger made the point, Nurse Berger made the point that, look, if we go to war, no one asks how we're going to pay for it. But a vaccine that could save lives, we start, pinching pennies. What is your response to that?
True. I think the culture of this country is that nothing should be free to everyone. You have to earn the right to have it. And if we give it away to people who can't pay for it, there's something wrong with that whole concept. And you can't do that with health. And I think if we learn nothing else from this situation, that should be it. Because it's like with people who don't immunize their children against measles. There's measles outbreaks. So you have to have everyone immunized. Now, that's not going to address the issue currently. That's going to prevent it in the future by immunizing everyone. And look at what happened to polio. Everyone got immunized, children got immunized, and that we don't have polio anymore. So the vaccine isn't even given. I'm probably part of that last group that has a polio vaccination scar. But the vaccine will help in the future, and it has to be available to every single person who is here, every single person, regardless of whether they can pay for it. The government needs to do that because the government is supposed to be there to take care of everyone. And so, I mean, to me, that's a no-brainer.
No, it's a no-brainer, but the question was asked. And of course, this was at a forum, a health forum hosted by National Nurses United and Senator Bernie Sanders. One has to wonder where, and the story changes every day, Dr. Rodgers, where President Trump would be on this and where Joe Biden would be on this because Vice President Biden was not at that forum. But let me just get about less than a minute, if I can, from you, Reverend Wilson. Less than a minute. Is this a moral issue?
I think it is a moral issue when you have legislators refusing to address, and the president to address the issue of the impact of economic status on whether or not people have access to appropriate health care and testing and treatment. I think that we have to look at what the churches do now, because those are the largest weekly gatherings of anyone in the country, churches and faith institutions. How do they handle this coronavirus? With people, I know the Catholic Church has changed the way they give communion for the first time in my lifetime, where you don't have the common cup being distributed anymore. So we have to look at how we handle things very differently now.
Attorney Batillo, I've got less than a minute. What do you think about this? Should the vaccine be free, yes or no?
Oh, absolutely. The vaccine should be free because it benefits all of us. There are more people who are vaccinated, the less chance you have of clusters leading to a new outbreak, the less chance you have of a mutation that might be able to go around the current vaccination. So it's very important that we get the entire nation, if not the entire world, vaccinated. The same way that we did with smallpox when we were able to eradicate that by having worldwide vaccinations.
Everybody, let me know what you think. I mean, I agree with Ms. Berger, the head of the National Nurses United. She said it's an absurd question, whether we should question whether this vaccine should be free or not. Should be free and available to all, from the billionaire to the folks who have no money to people who have all the money. Give it to everybody. Level that playing field. What do you think about that? And what can we do, Dr. Rodgers, when we get on the other side of the break, to mitigate this, to protect ourselves? I know there's something we can do. There's got to be something or some things that we can do, and let's talk about that on the Santita Jackson Show, streaming live on Talk 1017 FM out of Milwaukee, Talk 92.7 FM out of Madison, and WCPT 820 here in Chicago. Back in just a minute. 820 here in Chicago. Call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. Streaming live on the Santita Jackson and Friends page. Hello, everybody joining my Morning Stars. Like and share. And please like and subscribe over on the Santita Jackson Show on YouTube. We have rung the alarm bell loud and clear. That's what the World Health Organization said as they declared the coronavirus, officially declared it a global pandemic. Italy's hospitals are overwhelmed by the coronavirus, and top official said that the worst is yet to come for the United States, according to the Common Dreams report. Top 20 economists endorse Medicare for All as the best plan to cut costs and provide health care to everyone. In the meantime, we're watching Senate Republicans block emergency paid sick leave bill. Wow. As experts have declared this a pandemic. What is the deal, everybody? This is a pandemic. A lot of people are going to get sick. A lot of people are not going to be able to go to work. In the meantime, America still has drug import sanctions against Iran, and Iran is saying this is medical terrorism. Lift the ban. We need to be well, too. So, and in 20 states in a row, a majority of Democratic primary voters support Medicare for all. I'm just bringing you these headlines as President Trump kept his discussions about the coronavirus. They were classified. What does he know? What do we need to know? We're talking with Dr. Susan Rodgers, who is the president-elect of the Physicians for National Health Program, Reverend Attorney Jeanette Wilson from Rainbow Push, and Attorney Robert Patillo, civil rights attorney. I wanted to bring people from different disciplines to talk about this because, Dr. Rodgers, Medicare for All is on the table right now. You said that this is when we see how important Medicare for All is. Please explain.
Well, Medicare for All, our mantra is everybody in, nobody out, because it just speaks to the whole notion that everyone is entitled to be healthy, and everything is better if everyone is healthy. You can't function well if you're not healthy. If you go to a restaurant, you want the person cooking your food to be healthy and not have a contagious disease. Just like now, when you go to a grocery store, someplace we all have to go at some point, you want the people who are in the store with you to be healthy. So Medicare for All would help ensure that. It is not necessarily going to eliminate disease, but it will address disease so that everybody can at least be as healthy as they can be. And that in a pandemic like this, where healthcare needs to become a priority, Medicare for All is clearly the way to address this. Everybody gets the care that they need, regardless of their ability to pay. And unfortunately, this administration has been more interested in the economics and addressing that issue rather than addressing the pandemic. Even last night, he was more concerned with that and the numbers rather than the fact that we are totally underestimating the number of people infected with this disease and how it's going to impact on how we deliver health care to other medical issues that are not related to the virus. If you're in a bad car accident, you want there to be available care for you and not have all the ICU beds taken care of by something that we could have prevented. So it's Medicare for All is one of the ways we can address an incident like this if it happens again.
What can we do to protect ourselves? I mean, is there anything that we can do, like help with our immune systems, washing our hands? If you can just give us about 3 or 4 quick points.
Yes, that will help. Washing hands, wiping down surfaces in your home, in your office. Don't touch other people. I know it's almost reflex to give people a hug, somebody you care about, but you need to avoid doing that. And it becomes really difficult in your family because you don't know if, when my husband comes home, has he brought home the virus with him? I hope not, but there's no way to tell. And so we can only protect ourselves, but so much. We can do those things that will help prevent us from getting the disease, but the fact that we're not testing, we don't know who is infected and who can spread the disease now. So again, washing your hands. If you have gloves, you can wear gloves when you go out and make sure that you throw them away. Wiping down surfaces and things like that. Masks do not really help unless it's the N95 mask that medical providers use, and that keeps the virus from coming through the air into you. The other masks really don't help prevent that.
But how long does the mask work? That N95, do you have to change it after every use, or can you use it a couple of times, or do you use it throughout the day? How does that work?
Well, that's a good question, and unfortunately, I really don't know the answer to that, but I know that in the hospital, we would reuse them. We would only use them for patients who had highly contagious infections like tuberculosis and things like that, and we would reuse the same mask. The thing is, when you wear it all day, it's hard to breathe with that mask. It will get dirty. So you do have to change the mask periodically. I'm not sure what the guidelines are now, but we're running out of them. We don't have an unlimited supply, unfortunately, for those masks.
Attorney Patillo, are people liable? Would an employer be liable if, if you felt some subtle pressure to come to work, right? And what is it? What are the liabilities? Because people in this time of economic woe, people are really afraid not to go to work. I mean, let's just keep it real here. And you go to work as we soldier through because we don't want someone else to get our job. We don't want to lose our job. I mean, a lot of corporations are cutting jobs. What are you supposed to do? What rights do workers have?
Well, workers have a lot of rights, but as far as liability goes, there has to be some violation of either a standard of care or of a law prior to liability kicking in. So let's say there was a government mandate, such as in Italy today, to shut down all non-essential businesses, not any non-medical provider, not any non-grocery store had to close. So let's say that a business decided to defy that government mandate, and then after that a worker gets sick, then that business will be liable to that worker for causing the sickness. However, as far as economics and jobs goes and job security, there are federal protections in place to prevent workers from being fired for their medical status. So if you feel that you are sick, the normal process is inform your manager that you're sick. Everybody knows what's going on at this point. Inform your HR at your company. As we said the other day, read your employee handbook with regards to the proper chain of command for reporting workplace sicknesses or absences, and take the time off that you need. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, if you have the choice between losing a job and losing your life, please choose your life and work out the job part later. I think that can be across the board advice for everybody, because we saw the president's address last night. The same president who initially called the outbreak a hoax. The same president who said that this was Democrats trying to bring down his economy, who said that this was a normal flu. We saw him sitting there at the giving an address, sniffling and coughing, out of breath and unable to complete sentences. This is a man who is over 70 years old, who has been exposed to coronavirus on at least 3 occasions that we know of. At the CPAC conference with Matt Gaetz on Air Force One, and shaking Doug Collins' hand in Atlanta when they landed at the CDC. Three of those individuals that he interacted with are currently under self-quarantine. The same president who has declined to be tested for coronavirus, who, when he was running, had that weird doctor in New York write a fake note saying that he was the healthiest person to ever take the presidency. When he had the White House physician lie and said that he was 230 pounds and in perfect health. So you have somebody like that in charge, and then they're sniffling and coughing. That is what's tanking the market. That is what's sending people into a tailspin and not understanding what is going on. So don't do that. As we said the other day, listen to nothing that person is saying, And this is a perfect example of that because that person continues to go to work, continues to tell people that they are fine, and probably has exposed numerous people in the White House who don't have the power of the presidency to coronavirus. Um, and it only makes things worse. So people should take the proper precautions, self-quarantine, social isolation, wash your hands, don't interact with too many people, avoid your relatives who are a little bit older because even if you're asymptomatic, you may infect them if their immune system is not as strong as yours. You could be that angel of death when you hug your grandma. So try to avoid other people and follow the news and follow the recommendations of health experts.
Reverend Wilson, why are we debating whether or not this vaccine, when it becomes available, um, whether we should, whether regardless of income, whether it should be free? I have a problem using the term free because somebody does pay for it, and it's the Americans pay for it. But allocating our monies to help take care of us when we allocate monies for war all the time. Why is there a debate about this?
Well, first of all, healthcare, like voting, like education, is not considered a constitutional right for every American. And so every time we have these kinds of situations, we are fighting for the right to access to high-quality health care or high-quality education or the right to vote. And that is why these elections, we take them lightly. We focus on, the top of the ticket. We have to begin to look at who are we sending to the state legislatures, who are we sending to the Congress and the U.S. Senate. We need to, I think the lawyers nationally need to consider initiating lawsuits on behalf of people, taxpayers, demanding the right to be tested, demanding the right for people to have access to the vaccines once they are prepared. And that has not been done. We take this stuff lightly, and we're listening to a person who is the leader of the free world who is incapable of articulating the seriousness of this matter and an appropriate approach to responding to a pandemic crisis.
But don't you think, we see this kind of insensitivity across the board, I'd say across the political spectrum. Might not be as extreme sounding on the Democratic side, but trying to get universal single payer or Medicare for all is something many Democrats don't sign up for. The moderates, so to speak, or the self-described moderates, the centrists, don't agree with Medicare for all. Some of them say it's Medicare for all who want it. And as appreciative as we are of ACA, so-called Obamacare, it moved us down the road, but it did not kick the can down far enough. And I think that it was structured in a way so that we could continue to build toward a system that would give every American equal access to equal high quality health care that, where the costs are taken care of. I mean, what?
There are always actions. One is the grassroots, people respond. There's a legal action, and then there's legislative. We need all three actions moving at the same time. All the health professionals are telling us what needs to happen, what should have happened, and so someone has to legally act on behalf of those vulnerable populations who cannot fight for themselves or even don't know to fight for themselves. Legislators need to be dealing in the United States Congress and in these state houses, making sure that in every state, since every state is impacted by coronavirus, that there's legislation passed, emergency legislation, if you will, as we did with Katrina, as we've done with other crises. We have to act as if this is, and it is, a crisis and move, not just washing our hands, which is what we need to be a cleaner society anyway. We need to make sure that tests are produced and distributed randomly. The reason polio was controlled and eliminated, every child in every school was tested automatically. We all had to do a polio test. Same thing with smallpox. And so we have to treat this disease like we've treated other diseases that cost thousands of lives in the past.
Let me go to Michael. Michael, how you doing this morning?
Hi, good morning, Santita. I'm doing much better than what I was before. Um, I agree with everything that I've heard. I had to actually turn off the television last night when I was listening to Trump. I'm part of that population that has underlying health conditions and I'm over 60. So it's clear to me, and it's only common sense, I would think, that a vaccination, when found, would be free. However, I also believe that there needs to be Pfizer attorney Reverend Wilson is absolutely correct. As taxpayers, we need to demand that tax money is now spent directly on dealing with the equipment that is going to be needed to be able to help these health systems, because if a pandemic does mean, as what was previously said, worldwide infection, how many of us are going to have to die before it dawns on the people that are in power that their policy needs to be changed? It's bad to say, and let me just say that what I saw last night on national television, clearly Trump has health issues that have to be addressed. And those health issues are a personal thing. For him, even if he doesn't address those issues, I'm more concerned about me, my family, my community, and what is the public policies that are going to directly help us. I'm from the school of belief. Last time I checked, the White House was public housing. Last time I checked, taxpayers were going to take the salary of congressional people. So if these moderates are not yet dealing with Medicare for all, we need to demand that they should. I'm sure they have relatives who can't afford the vaccines, who don't have insurance, or their insurance is limited. So I just think that we need to begin to move according to what we've been told in terms of Attorney Wilson, in terms of grassroots activities. We need to do what Mark Lovelace used to do, and it is to fight for justice and respect. And that's my comment. Santita, I'll be calling you later.
Blessings to you. And, and that's what Mark Lovelace, our beloved Mark, would be doing. And it's something that you need to do. Everybody needs to fight for themselves. We do. And we need to fight for each other. Attorney Patillo, as you talk about workers' rights and what we have the right to do, what we have the right to request, to demand, we're watching how this is something. I don't want people to be scared, number one, because I think that we should be, more than ever, this crisis creates an opportunity for us to really tap into our power as an American people. We should really be looking, I think, in 2020 at Medicare for all. I think that we should really be looking on our jobs at what our rights are. At having a work environment in which you can get sick, in which you do have margin for error. This is an opportunity, I think, for us to really re-examine where we are. Whether you have money or not, you have the right to get well. You understand what I'm saying, Attorney Patillo?
Absolutely, and I think one thing that that was put into stark relief yesterday, it was one thing when the Wuhan coronavirus was just some poor peasants in a province of China. People that was distant, that was far away. No, that was just affecting, some brown or yellow person she'll never see. But when it's Tom Hanks, America's sweetheart, with coronavirus, when it's Rudy Gobert, somebody with a $150 million contract in the NBA with coronavirus, when it's Donald Trump on television, the President of the United States, exhibiting every symptom that I think people have told us to look for when it comes to an older person having coronavirus, we realize that this virus does not care about money. It does not care about your socioeconomic status. It does not care about race. There was a urban legend being spread on the internet that black people could not get coronavirus because coronavirus has not affected Africa that much. Rudy Gobert is plenty black and has coronavirus. Do not think that black people are magically immune from the disease. So it does put into question all priorities. Why do we have so much money for war I believe the Pentagon budget for last year was $780 billion. The CDC budget was $10 billion. The CDC budget is less than an aircraft carrier, and that is who's in charge of the entirety of public health in this country. We realize the weakness of our federal systems because we don't have the power as a federal government to do what China did and quarantine 60 million people, or even to do what Italy has done and shut down the entire country. So the cracks in our system that have been papered over by economic prosperity are now coming into stark relief. And it's time for us, once we weather this storm, to find out who we are going to be as a nation, because we've been spoiled into complacency and thinking that these things can't happen here.
Melvin, what's on your mind today?
Hey, how's everybody doing this morning?
We are doing well. What's your question or comment?
My comment is about the, well, first of all, I'm glad I voted early voted, and, for president, and I think not Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, when he talks about health care, he has a bead on that, because, see, Joe Biden don't want to talk about it, but things that are happening across the country, things that have been happening, people have to go to the doctor and get examined. Look, all in the air. And Bernie Sanders is billing now that the DNC don't want Bernie Sanders to stay up in there. And all these other Democratic conservatives, I call them conservatives, not just central Democrats, they want Bernie Sanders out for some reason. And I don't think that's the right move. Bernie Sanders did the right thing by staying in the race. He's going to tell, they got a debate coming up in Arizona, I think, over the weekend, and we want to really talk about this situation. And Trump gets on there, and the Republicans never wanted to supply to health care. Republicans never wanted it, even when Obama was president.
Well, I think you're making some great points, because the fact is, though, I think that it's more than Republicans. We're seeing Democrats who've pushed back. So I think you have to step back, Mr. Melvin, and look at everybody's policies, because at the end of the day, either we're going to have Medicare for all, either we're going to have a universal single-payer system or not. Your private health insurance plan, heaven help us all, it's still they're driving us into bankruptcy, because these co-pays take you out, Dr. Rodgers. These co-pays are incredible, and you're seeing people going to the hospital for the coronavirus, and they're paying $18,000. I saw in one report. I mean, and this man was saying, wait a minute, I didn't want to go to the hospital. You told me to go. Yeah, I was sick, but $18,000, I cannot afford this. He's looking into the financial abyss. I've got about a minute left. The final word belongs to you, Dr. Rodgers. What should we be looking at in this 2020 election, particularly as we are going to vote here in Chicago on the 17th?
Well, I think that, the issue of Medicare for all, I think, is of utmost importance, because it is the one issue, medical care, that we all use. There's no question, and that's why I said before that this pandemic is really highlighting, I think, the need for a system like this. If you look at the ripple effect, the economic ripple effect of this virus, that you may be able to afford your copay today, but you may not be able to afford it next week if you cannot go to work. So the ability to pay is not a given just because you can do that today. And we have to make health care available 24/7 to people who need it. And so I think that it's crucial that this health care be provided to everyone, because it benefits everyone more than I think the military benefits everyone. Protecting a country that's not healthy isn't necessarily logical. So you have to be able to have a healthy country before you can do anything.
Attorney Robert Patillo, civil rights lawyer, Reverend, attorney, pastor, Rainbow Push's own, Jeanette Wilson. Thank you so much for being with us, for giving us these wonderful perspectives, and of course you, Dr. Susan Rodgers, president-elect of the Physicians for a National Health Program. Coming up, everybody, we're going to be talking about election 2020. Uh, Bernie Sanders is doing well, but we thought he might be getting more votes, more delegates than he has. Well, Congressman Clyburn from South Carolina said, look, if he doesn't sweep the states, he said this just before Super Tuesday Part 2, the DNC should step in, call the election won by Joe Biden, and let's just end this, and let's get ready to defeat Donald Trump in the fall. Do you agree with that? Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCBT. Should we keep on running or not? Back in just a minute. Great.
It may not be stomach issues.
For me, it's intense gas, or pain, or diarrhea.
All right. And we got to thank them for.
I
Be
spent
back in a
years
minute.
with the symptoms, but could never figure it out. No matter what I did, they never went away. So I decided to break it down for my doctor and get really specific about my symptoms.
We discovered that exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, or EPI, may be
Tell her we
the
love
reason
her.
for my stomach
We love her.
issues.
I can't
EPI
wait to have you
is
back.
pancreas.
You heard Mr.
It leads to
Davis.
diarrhea,
Say we
gas,
love
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show, streaming live, Talk 1017 FM in Milwaukee, Talk 92.7 FM in Madison, Wisconsin, and WCPT 820 here in Chicago. Call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763 WCPT. In this hour, we will be talking about election 2020. Everybody's got politics on the brain right now. We've got a presidential debate this weekend, but there will be no audience. But even as Senator Bernie Sanders has had some racist, some setbacks, he's still doing extremely well in the delegate race. It's still a race, everybody. Is there a clearest? Is there the clearest path to the nomination? No. But we still don't know what's going to happen. So, want to find out from you. Do you agree with Congressman Jim Clyburn, whose endorsement of of Vice President Biden, many people say that cleared the path for him to win in South Carolina and set up all of these wins in the black communities, because they are really that and white suburban women are really behind Biden's victories. So he said, look, if he doesn't sweep the primaries, he should, the DNC should step in, the corporation that owns the Democratic National, I mean, the board of directors of this corporation called the Democratic Party, because you do know it's a private organization, right? They should step in and end the primaries and just by decree make Vice President Biden the winner. And let's just move toward defeating President Trump in the fall. What do you think about that? As you think about that, I want to bring up Wells Kaufman, someone who we just absolutely adore. I cannot wait for the summertime. I cannot wait to go to Ravinia. Wells, how are you today?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Oh, it's always a joy to hear your voice. Make me feel better. Transport me. Coronavirus, all these things that I'm thinking about. Help take me, because you know some of the most fun that I had last summer was at Ravinia. Yes. I absolutely loved it. Yes. I loved it.
Summer as well. We've got some pretty amazing shows, and it's so lovely to be on the phone with you this morning to tell you about it. We're just announcing today, and all of it's on Ravinia.org if your listeners want to check out the whole season. But I think, were you at the Lauryn Hill concert a couple of years ago?
No. Oh, do you have her back?
Yeah, she's coming back in September. John Legend's coming back. Some classics like Patti LaBelle and Gladys Knight coming back to us. Jill Scott with Music Soul Child. Jesse and Joy, Rod and Gab. Trombone Shorty with The Roots. All sorts of wonderful artists. And, of course, a huge kaleidoscope of classical artists, including our new chief conductor, a woman named Marin Alsop. You know, in the classical music world, it's pretty male-dominated, pretty male-centric. Marin, one of the few women to have a truly international career on the podium. Great conductor, great person, great social entrepreneur. She does a lot of work with kids in underserved areas, especially in Baltimore, where she has been music director for the last 14 years. And that's a tough city. It's a great city. And she's really enjoyed her time there. But the education piece has been huge for her. So she's going to be doing some of that with us. She's also conducting, do you know Cynthia Erivo? Do you know?
Yes, absolutely.
So Cynthia is our gala soloist, Marin on the podium in front of Chicago Symphony Orchestra. Cynthia, because this is the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, that you probably well know, Cynthia's got a show called Legendary Voices of Women. And she's put together this amazing set list of everything from Eddie James to Aretha Franklin to Billie Holiday to Summertime from Porgy and Bess. She's a great singer. It's her debut with us. And that's the performance that people dress up in their black tie and go to dinner afterwards. The monies we raise from that help support our efforts in underserved schools, especially in Chicago, but also in Waukegan and in North Chicago. So that's going to be a great night in July. Carrie Underwood's coming back to us. Love Carrie Underwood.
I love her. Because I was going to also... Well, because I also wanted to ask you about, because, you know, you've given us some great music from the worlds of rhythm and blues, classic soul. I mean, come on. Gladys Knight, I'm so excited about that, and Patti LaBelle. But you know what I loved last year was when I was there with my dad, and I saw Shaka Khan and Michael McDonald, and you bring people really from. You really do not miss any of the genres. I mean, you get people from the world of pop. You get people from the world of rhythm and blues. You get people from country. Who else could? Who else will we see? I mean, and my former next door neighbor Ramsey Lewis. Hello.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, what we say about Ravinia is that it really is something for everyone, which means that people that have a very eclectic and kind of omnivorous taste in music love the place because there is always something they can find. We still have a lot of audience members, believe it or not, who, if it's a beautiful night, they'll come to Ravinia not even knowing what's being played. I'm really proud of that because that's amped up in the recent years that I've been at Ravinia because the quality really has gone up and people can really enjoy stuff. Whether it's Train, one of the most popular bands we've ever had, Ziggy Marley's coming to do a tribute to his father, Bob. All covers of Bob Marley songs. This is the 75th birthday year for Bob Marley. And the greatest superstar ever, right? Diana Ross coming back to us.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, and you're a singer. You know these people.
You know, I sang with Roberta Flack for years, and so that was just an incredible experience. And actually, I didn't do Ravinia when I was with her though, but I went to see her the last time she performed at Ravinia.
Yeah, that was with Isaac Hayes, I think, right?
That was his last performance before he passed, like 2-3 weeks later. Yeah.
I know. Talk about a legend, both of them.
Yeah.
Really, really incredible. Really.
This is incredible.
I gotta tell you that we have Ari Shapiro. You know Ari Shapiro?
Yes.
Always considered. He's coming. Did you know that he sings?
No, I did not know that. Yes.
He was in Cabaret on Broadway for years. Wonderful singer, wonderful actor. They're good friends. They're coming and bringing their considered cabaret show, singing, talking. It's going to be really fun. It happens right before the Democratic Convention starts in Milwaukee, so you know what it's going to be like in this year. I mean, politics is all everybody's thinking about. So that's going to be a really fun show. That's in our Martin Theater. And I just sort of bring that one out, both because we're on the radio, but because you get the politics piece in a big way. And I can't imagine that's not going to be one of the topics that they'll bring up and have a lot of fun with at the same time.
Well, I cannot wait. And, I want the people who are listening to us out of, because, we're on in Milwaukee, Madison, and 2 other cities up in Wisconsin. We want to invite you to come to Chicago, to the Chicago area. Come to Ravinia. Go to ravinia.org because it would be a wonderful weekend for you. It would be it's only a couple of hours away. It will be a wonderful, wonderful experience for you, for our audience members on Talk 101.7 FM up in Milwaukee and Talk 92.7 in Madison. I think that they would have a marvelous time at Ravinia. How can we get in touch with you, Wells Kaufman?
So Ravinia.org has all the information about tickets, about food and beverage, about how to get to the place itself. Probably a lot of your listeners know, but maybe some don't, that we were built by a train company in 1904. We're the last private train stop in Illinois, and it's still the best, easiest way to get to us. So if you've got folks coming from Milwaukee and Madison, if they can find their way to Kenosha, they can take the train right down to Highland Park, and they'll be there, which might be a nice way to find us. I love Madison, by the way. It's such a great town. And
it really is, and you've got John Nichols on who's going to be up in a minute, and he is a Madison man.
Oh, perfect. Excellent. Yeah, lots goes on there. It's such a vibrant community because of the school, but also because it's a great place to live. So we welcome all those Madisonites. In fact, I think we have the music director. We've had the music director of the Madison Symphony come to us. And actually, Ada de Vaart, who is a Dutch conductor, the one I grew up with in San Francisco when he was music director of the San Francisco Symphony. Ada was music director in Milwaukee. He now lives just outside of Madison, and he's going to be conducting for us for the first time in about 20 years. So lots of nice Wisconsin connections. And we love cheese, right? So,
We love that. We love that. Wells Kaufman, everybody from Ravinia. We love him, and we love Ravinia. And when you go out there, you can have a wonderful dinner. They have beautiful restaurants. You can picnic out there. You just don't want to miss it. Go to ravinia.org for more information so that you can find out about this magnificent array of talent that they're going to have for us all summer into spring, summer into the fall. So, Wells Kaufman, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure always. We'll talk again soon, I'm sure, over the next weeks.
Absolutely. My hugs to Wells Kaufman. We love him. We had such a wonderful time with him last summer. I even took my dad as a date. Well, I had to share him with my brother, Jesse, but there it is. You know what? We've got a tremendous panel of guests. We've got to get Reverend Marcia Dyson up. But joining John Nichols from The Nation magazine and Reverend Frank Watkins, senior advisor to Reverend Jesse Jackson for more than 50 years. And in fact, he was one of the architects of Reverend Jackson's 84 and 88 campaigns, and he's been in every presidential campaign really since 1972. And Dwight McKee, social scientist, brilliant, brilliant minds, each one of them. And we'll have Reverend Marcia Dyson up in a hot second as we talk about election 2020. I'm going to start with you, John Nichols. I need your help here. Many people are saying, okay, Bernie Sanders, we wanted to see a more explosive performance, in terms of the elections, in terms of the primaries. But he's still hanging in there. He's still competitive. And he did something very interesting yesterday. He said, look, I'm still in this, and I'm in it for the people who I'm representing, the future of the party. And I couldn't help but think that he was doing this in response to Congressman Clyburn's assertion. Now, Congressman Clyburn, man of tremendous importance and import, someone whose endorsement many people said really pushed Joe Biden over the top and has made him the front runner, and quelled, of course, the fears of moderates everywhere, John Nichols. But he said, what, if he doesn't sweep these states, the DNC needs to intervene, step in. Wow. And into this race, because we know where it's going, and let's unify around Vice President Biden and defeat Trump in the fall. How would that work out, John Nichols?
Oh, I don't think it would go over well with a lot.
I just thought I'd ask.
Yeah, look, Congressman Clyburn is a brilliant political strategist in his state and a significant national figure. I think everybody should listen to him when he offers his ideas, right? And the same is true for a lot of other figures who are offering ideas at this point. This is not uncommon. We have these moments in our history where there is a push and pull as regards the pressures of a November election, the desire to get everything together and go toward November, and the pressures of a party as it seeks to unite, as it seeks to get through a process. And you know full well that in 1988, there were plenty of people who would have loved to see the Reverend Jesse Jackson stand down at various points in the primary process to stop campaigning, fold in, endorse Dukakis, get it all done. But he chose to go on to the convention, and that was a really significant thing, I think, for the future of the Democratic Party. My sense is that nothing but good came of, in that case, the Reverend Jackson's decision to continue on. 88 was a tough year politically, but so many things were put in place for the years, indeed the generations to come. That was where we really started to get this concept of voter mobilization, of expanding the electorate, of opening up the DNC itself. So, to my view, continuing a campaign, even when it's difficult, if you do it right, can be very, very beneficial to the party and even to the nominee, to the race that goes forward. So I tend to be in the other camp. I mean, my view is that the voters will send signals going forward. And if it is clear after Sunday's debate and in the primaries and caucuses to come that the voters are not interested in continuing this process, the vote totals will tell us that. And I think that Senator Sanders will undoubtedly adjust accordingly. On the other hand, if Senator Sanders has a great debate on Sunday, one that really, telegraphs a lot of messages and sensibilities as regards what still needs to be addressed, what still is possible. And in the voting that goes on, if he gets significant levels of support, then, I think that takes us in a different direction. I don't want to be vague about this, what I want to say is that telling people to get out of races, as James Carville and some people are, just get out, that I'm always uncomfortable with that. I didn't like it when they did it when some people were doing it to Elizabeth Warren a week or so ago. Frankly, I don't like it when people try to tell candidates what to do and how to do it. In a democracy, it's very healthy to let the voters decide whether they want a candidacy to continue. And I guess that's the point that we are at. And I think, frankly, that's what Senator Sanders recognized in his press conference. And I'll just emphasize one thing about the press conference. In many ways, what he was doing there was telegraphing to Joe Biden what Joe Biden needs to do as regards reaching out to young voters, as regards embracing some of these fundamental issues that have arisen. If Biden listens and acts, there's a lot of opportunity, even beginning with this next debate, to unite the party.
Frank Watkins, what do you see? What do you think? Because you've actually been here before when, as John Nichols was part of the 84 and 88 campaigns, and you were one of Reverend's, and you're still one of his senior advisors. At one point, it looked like Reverend could actually capture the nomination. He was positioned to do that. And then when that possibility faded, he had to pivot and still carry the people he was running for, and really carry these points home. Is it time to pivot, or is it time to drop out?
Well, when people like Reverend Jackson, Senator Bernie Sanders, who are people who deeply believe in what they are doing and the issues that they are raising, are campaigning, if they were to just all of a sudden drop out of the race, it would be like abandoning their, the constituency that they have brought along. Yeah. And it would also kind of send a message, we were really just kind of playing with you. We didn't really believe all the things we were saying. In other words, if you can give up, if you have the kind of convictions that Reverend Jackson had, the kind of convictions that Senator Sanders has, and you just all of a sudden up and quit, I think that kind of sends a message to your constituents that you weren't really serious all along, that you can just up and leave, you can abandon them, and so forth. So that does not work. John is absolutely right about, democracy and the higher-ups, so to speak, telling you to get out of the race. I saw James Carville on TV the other night talking about the people and democracy. I wonder if Senator Sanders had been in the same position as Senator Biden found himself in the other night, if he would have been saying the same thing about the people and democracy if Bernie Sanders had swept the way Senator Biden has been sweeping the races. The third point I would make about Congressman Clyburn and others who will be 80 years old, I think, in June or July of this year. If Bernie Sanders drops out, I guess it would be left to Senator Clyburn and so forth to go out and mobilize the young people to vote. There's an absolute divide between the support that Bernie Sanders has of those under 40 years old and those over 40 years old, and especially those over 65 years old. So really, both of the candidates, if Sanders were to get the nomination or if Biden continues on his road to get the nomination, they need each other. So if Senator Sanders wins, he needs help to getting, the older voters. If Vice President Biden wins,
he's going to need help to get younger voters. So it's kind of a variation of what Reverend Jackson said, that we need two wings to fly. One wing can't fly this boat, this plane. We need two wings to fly, and so they're going to have to work out an accommodation and figure out how they're going to move together to defeat Donald Trump on November the 3rd. And at this particular point, that's not evident. Again, as John said, I believe, or I've heard you say, Vice President Biden only has about 800 delegates. He needs 1,991. There's also an alternative to winning, and that's stopping Biden from getting 1,991, which gives you a degree of leverage and power relative to the platform in Milwaukee, even if you're not the leading candidate. On the other hand, if he does well, if Senator Sanders does well in the debate and does well in the primary on the Tuesday following, then we're in a different situation. Even if he does well in the debate and he doesn't do well on Tuesday, but people are deciding that Biden is their guy, then it may become even clear to Senator Biden, to Senator Sanders and his supporters that, well, it doesn't seem as though, the American people are going to go with him. And so it gives them a rationale for easing out of the campaign as well. But Senator Sanders is the one that has to decide, when to leave the campaign and how to leave the campaign that doesn't leave his constituents high and dry.
Everybody stay right here. I want to talk with you about that. Because it's not just Senator Sanders who's running, just like it's not Vice President Biden who's running. You're running for people. And particularly when you are like at the head of a movement, which is what Senator Sanders is really, he's at the forefront of that at this time. How would his followers feel, the voters? Let's talk about it. Santita Jackson Show. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. Talk 1017 in Milwaukee. Talk 1017 FM in Milwaukee. Talk 927 FM in Madison and WCPT 820 here in Chicago. Madison's own John Nichols from The Nation magazine has joined us. And of course, Reverend Frank Watkins, senior advisor to Reverend Jesse Jackson for more than 50 years, one of the architects of the 84 and 88 campaigns. He's worked in every presidential campaign since I'd say about 1972. He brings a lot of experience to us. Reverend Marcia Dyson, a great freedom fighter herself, and minister, and just really, there's no greater advocate for civil rights and for women in particular than Reverend Marcia Dyson. And of course, I didn't realize this, but her classmate, Dwight McKee, great social scientist. You never know when you find out these things about people. I didn't know that. Reverend Dyson, how are you?
Good morning.
Good morning.
And good morning to your listeners.
Tell me, what do you think? We are in the midst of this contentious, really it's a contentious time in America. I mean, a lot of things are up in the air. We're really anxious about a lot, about health care, and then of course this coronavirus pandemic, world pandemic, has got us all thinking about health care in ways that many of us maybe have not been thinking before. We're concerned about the republic. We're concerned about the democracy. More and more Americans feel that the American dream is out of reach. And one of the only things that we have to hold on to, even in the face of voter suppression, would be our vote, right? That kind of evens everything out, equals everything out. Now, Representative Clyburn, who many people said really delivered the black vote and the vote to Vice President Biden, and really it's essentially made him the front runner for the Democratic nomination at this point. He said, look, if after Tuesday night, Super Tuesday 2, if Bernie Sanders doesn't sweep these states, the DNC needs to step in and just shut this down so that we can go on and declare him the nominee and move on toward unifying the party and move on toward the fall. What do you think about that?
I just want to say, Frank Watkins, it's so great to hear your voice. And I'm humbled to be on this particular panel this morning. I think that given the past elections, especially 2016, when Bernie Sanders felt as if he was thrown under the bus and that the burn that he tried to incite to get people excited about the process of voting and getting him into office in 2016, that we would be throwing kerosene on that trail if we stopped him from doing what is in his heart to do. Like one of your speakers today talked about this as a democracy. So if a person wants to run, they should be able to run on and see what the end can be. And when you look at, too, the fracturing and the fragility of the frailty of the DNC, I think that if I was Clyburn and he did deliver the black vote for Biden, that you would want to make sure at this particular junction in history that you would want it to come back healthy, because it is not. That's the reason why you have independents running on the Democrat ticket and Democratic Socialists running on the Democrat ticket, because there's a sort of a weakness in the party that they must heal. So I believe that they would fracture that relationship if they try to stop Bernie given 2016. And also, it's not just Bernie. It's also his voters. You're absolutely right. I believe the last guest also said about the youth vote. Biden is hitting out gotten the black vote, but he's also gotten most of the people who are over 40, 50, or 60 even. And I think it's also good for the Republic as well is to allow Bernie gave his 10 commandments. He gave Biden a gift by saying, this is what I'm going to ask you on the debate, right? So he's given Biden an opportunity to listen himself, and if he doesn't use that nugget that Bernie has given him, it may show his own weaknesses as well. I think it's an exciting time in the midst of the health crisis that we're going through, because no matter what, for me at the end of the day, the one thing I learned in working with your father and having the tutelage and being able to watch people like Frank Watkins is that we have to have information. Without information, you make the wrong decisions, and at least you can stop and think and look at things more broader than just our narrow mindedness, where we try to make our political processes as if it's an American Idol. I don't think that Bernie Sanders nor Biden are running just for their own popularity. I think that they're running for, as you said, Santita, the importance and the needs of the people of America. So whether it's about Trump, they're not trying to knock out each other. I hope what they're trying to do in each of their campaigns is to make America better for every citizen that has been ignored or marginalized in the last 4 and maybe years even beyond that. So I would not stop the Bernie burn. I think it would incense his followers, rightfully so, and that would not be good whether Biden won and beat Trump or Bernie found a way to sweep on Tuesday or not. I think that we need to just try to heal within the party itself, even not so much greater than being a victory over Trump, but has to be not an either or, but a both and at this juncture for the Democrat Party.
Dwight McKee, what do you have to say?
Well, good morning, Santita.
Good morning.
There's a lot with who they think that Bernie may burn is that you got a situation where Biden is, it seems as if they're trying to defend Biden from Bernie and from the questions that Bernie wants to raise, and protect him from his own answers. I think that that Biden is yet to be held accountable for a lot of his decisions, and they are afraid for those issues to be raised. I shudder to think what would have happened if Trump would have taken the position to close down their convention and just give it to him. We would be shouting tyranny on the rooftops. It's a very dangerous precedent to set. That the role of a convention is to convene in order to deal with the candidate and the platform. We haven't agreed on the candidate, but we also haven't agreed on the platform, which candidate is supposed to represent. And for some reason, they don't want those issues to be raised. I'm so glad that Fannie Lou Hamer didn't take that position and not deal with the Mississippi delegation. I'm glad that in 1972, when Reverend Jackson and
Bill Singer.
Bill Singer went down to Florida and there was a Civil War Convention and bailed them and had those insiders thrown out of the authority position and expanded the democracy of the DNC, which is how come now blacks have such a major role in the Democratic Party. I just really am intimidated by the fact that they're trying to lock everything down. And I think that Bernie has some legitimate questions to raise and legitimate positions, he and Miss Warren, to take at this stage in the election cycle. It's very, very dangerous to me for us to be so anti-democratic.
Frank Watkins, you were in, of course, Dwight McKee has taken us through a whole history. I want you, then John Nichols, and I'm going to go to the callers to speak to that, because you were in Miami with Reverend Jackson and Bill Singer in 1972. You were part of that brigade that unseated the all-powerful Mayor Daley, and you've always been part of the insurgency. I don't know, Lady B, I think we need to get him off the phone. John Nichols and Dwight McKee and Reverend Dyson, he might get me taken off my radio show. Goodness gracious. But tell us, how do you treat these insurgents who end up saving the party? Because I've never seen you all trying to break up the party. I thought you were trying to invite more people in.
Yeah, well, it was interesting. I liked Dwight's language about locking the nomination down now. And if you lock the nomination down now, you lock the people out. So we got to keep the people in the process and keep moving forward. that was essentially what happened in 1972 in Miami. There were new rules that made the party more democratic. In the past, before 1972, nominees were basically picked behind closed doors in smoke-filled rooms, and the McGovern Commission made recommendations that opened the process up a little more. And the Daley machine had violated those rules. And Alderman Singer and Reverend Jackson challenged the fact that they had violated those rules. And the Daley delegation refused to compromise. We offered them a compromise that we would split the delegates. They would have half and we would have half. They refused to accept the compromise. And so the convention voted to put them out of the convention. By the way, it just so happened that we were moving into our headquarters that Saturday morning. That happened about 9 o'clock on Friday night. We were to move into our new headquarters at 930 East 50th Street on, I believe it was July the 1st. Mm-hmm. And about 3 or 4 o'clock that morning, they firebombed Operation Push, the building, and Reverend Jackson literally found the gas can and preached that morning with the gas can, saying that we were literally born under fire. Also takes me back to, of course, people wanted him to get out of the race in 1984, but because he kept on registering voters as we went down the nomination trail, in 1986 we were able to elect about 6, I think, or 7 Southern Democrats that they didn't expect to elect in Florida, Hollings in South Carolina, in North Carolina, in Louisiana, Weiss Fowler in Georgia. Mm-hmm. We even elected Shelby in Alabama, who was a Democrat at that time. And so he decided to thank us by turning Republican in 1992. The other problem that Dwight hit on right on point was in his call to shut everything down. His rationale was, well, you know, and for Brady to get out of the race, he said, well, you know, if you just continue the race and have these debates, mistakes can be made. So he recognized there was a certain weakness in Biden, and he doesn't want the process to continue for fear that Biden might make some mistakes in these debates or on the campaign trail. Well, I think it's better to make the mistake now and to bring out the weakness so you can deal with it, rather than to discover that in a debate against the tyrant that we will have in Donald Trump, you know, an autocratic sociopath.
See, Joji's going to get me put off the air, John Nichols. Just before I go to the callers, I mean, we've seen this before. In The Nation magazine had a really wonderful documentary on Reverend Jackson's 84 and 88 campaigns. I mean, this has never been, it's always been about bringing people in, not locking people out. I mean, I just think that calling for that was, I mean, for someone, particularly for someone who got the right to vote as an adult, he knows what being locked out is about, right?
I don't fault it. Well, I don't fault anybody for taking a stand and expressing their view. That I will let people do that because, of course, this is this great discourse that we are in. And I think the thing to understand is this. We're giving people a lot of history here today because it is important to understand that power is not as smart as a lot of our pundits would suggest that it is. Well, there are people who say that a billionaire is the right person to run a government because if there was a crisis, maybe a pandemic, they would know how to do the things that would stabilize the global financial markets. Well, today we're seeing that's not the case. That the powerful and the wealthy don't always have the answers. In fact, often they are so disconnected that they need the counsel of the great mass of people. And this is why I think we give you all this history here. It's not just to go back down memory lane. It is to say this is an ongoing struggle. There are always folks who are going to say, "Oh well, let's do it the easy way. Let's do it the way we've always done it." And I'll just give you one example from 1988, and that is that, and Frank will remember this well. Starting in April of, which is, we're almost to April now. We're heading that way. Starting in April of 1988, Reverend Jackson, continuing his campaign, lost 15 primary and caucus fights. He only won 2, Delaware and D.C. He lost 15 of them. And yet he carried on. He carried on to that convention. Now, by any measure, every pundit would be saying, "Oh, he's on a losing streak. It's no good is coming to this. Get out of there." And yet, in most of those contests, he got a few delegates here, maybe a lot more there. They kept piling up. He got to that convention with more than 1,000 delegates. He had standing. He had a position where he could make demands. He used those demands to make sure that they kept the language in that platform opposing apartheid, saying that the Democratic Party was an anti-apartheid party. He made sure that they opened up platform debates about issues that had never been discussed sufficiently, and in some cases not at all. The debate about Palestinian rights, about the Middle East, opened up at that convention. And he made sure that an understanding of the power of mass turnout, of opening up the process and bringing people in, was a part of the party's understanding going forward. They opened up the DNC. They put people like Jim Zogby onto the DNC who really were expanding its message, or at least put them onto key committees in that. And the end result is that Reverend Jackson put issues on the table. He opened up the discourse. I think he made connections. Maybe the best answer of all to this whole debate is play the Reverend's speech from that 88 convention. It was one of the most extraordinary speeches in the history of American politics. And you don't want to shut people who have that capacity out. And so I'll just conclude by saying, think about Bernie Sanders at this point. Think about the issues he is trying to put on the table. Single-payer, Medicare for all, health care. What we would need in a situation like this, in a time like the coronavirus crisis that we are in, paid family leave, paid sick leave, something we need right now. Protections for workers who may lose their jobs or who may lose their hours, something we need in a moment right now. And the possibility of opening up the Democratic Party to a mass movement politics that, whether Sanders is nominated or not, or let's just say it, Joe Biden is nominated, where he might be the beneficiary of this expanded politics that doesn't just elect him with a 51-49 victory over Donald Trump, but elects him with that magical 60-40 victory, the thing that Lyndon Johnson had, the thing that Franklin Roosevelt used to get, the thing that allowed you not merely to come in and tinker around the edges, but to fundamentally transform the American promise on behalf of economic and social and racial justice. Good grief, isn't this a possibility that we should at least entertain and hope for?
Amen to that. Let me go to Noel. Ooh, boy, so much history. This is part of what we're doing here. Noel, what's on your mind today?
Yes, good morning, man. How you doing?
Great hearing your voice. What's your question or comment?
Yes, I have a comment. I think Mr. Biden is going to get a nomination, but my prediction is he's going to lose the election, and that's from history. If you look at the election from like the 80s up to today, the winners have always been outsiders somehow. The Washington insiders have never won the presidency since that time. People need something to vote for. And what is Biden's message? Look at Al Gore, Hillary Clinton, and then look at who won the Democratic presidency. From Bill Clinton to Obama, they put forward something for people to vote for, not against. So what is Biden's message? not be voting for.
No, you're making a great point because you really, positive energy means a whole lot. Thank you so much. Let me go to Ron from Naperville. Ron, what's on your mind? Great hearing your voice, sweetie.
I think. How are you? Okay, so I'm thinking of a couple things. One, I'm thinking of sock puppets. So imagine the debate or the discourse that occurs after Bernie says, "Sure, I'm going to drop out because it's the right thing to do." The debate would then be Biden with two socks on his hands saying, "Well, I think I should be a little more progressive. I think I should not. I don't want to scare people." So that's basically what we would take this extremely powerful story and turn it into, is a sock puppet debate. New Yorkers, the community wouldn't get to vote. No one gets to vote and decide if they want to have a sock puppet party. But our wonderful DNC, I really think is not helping us. They should really say, we really think that the people should get a voice this time.
Ron, stay right there. I can't believe Dwight is laughing out loud. Dwight, what has stirred your mirth? Talk to me.
Just I can just see the graphic of the two socks talking one to the other. I thought it was such a profound example.
Because that's what I feel like, John Nichols and Reverend Dyson, I only have about 3 minutes left in the segment. I want to give each of you closing thoughts. The sock puppet debate. First, you, Reverend Dyson, I've got about less than a minute for you.
Because we live in a democratic republic, I think that the people should have their way. And if Bernie wants to continue the process of staying in the primary, we should let it be.
And you know that's true because you were in the '88 campaign. You would have been furious because as some people tried to tell Reverend to step out, if he had stepped out. Let me just ask you very quickly: if he had responded to these demands that he step out, how would you have felt in a couple of minutes? Not even in a couple of minutes, a few seconds.
I think it would have been detrimental. I think that the strength that we have as American voters would have been diminished, and it would have basically washed some of his history. And he was too important at that particular time, given the fact that what we're talking about is giving people information, and no one gave people information as great as your father did during that time period.
Well, I mean, and not just during that time, for all time, quite frankly, because he's the reason we're here. Mm-hmm. Because I remember him telling us, Frank Watkins, the reason I'm running, he sat my brothers, and my sister and I, the 5 of us down. He said, "I'm running to take the ceiling off of your ambitions. I don't want you to grow up in an America in which you believe that you can't be all that you can be. Mm-hmm. I don't want that for you." I'm going to give Frank Watkins the final word. John Nichols?
Well, I'm glad to take a second here and simply say that, to my view, we got to be thinking about two numbers out of Michigan, 81 and 82. 81% of voters in that age from 25 to 29 voted for Bernie Sanders. I think I'm right on that. 82% of voters under the age of 25 voted for Bernie Sanders. These are people who are coming into the process, many of whom have never voted for president before. These are hundreds of thousands of people across the country, millions of people. And they believe so passionately in this thing. You don't want to have their first experience of politics to be getting shut down by politicians. Absolutely. You want their experience of politics to be, filled with hope and possibility. No, they have not turned out at the level you want, because I think a lot really are cynical about it. But boy, I can't imagine anything that would feed the cynicism more than a premature exit from the race by the main candidate who seems to connect with them.
No Brexit. Let me give this to you. Frank Watkins, I've got about 30 seconds.
Well, the irony is, where did Bernie lose the biggest? Mississippi. But guess what? Mississippi voters, Democratic voters, overwhelmingly favored Medicare for all. The idea that Bernie Sanders is not electable is not logical. When they ask people, the favorables about candidates, Bernie Sanders is the most popular. He gets the highest favorable rating. And lastly, the issues that he's raising, Medicare for all and relieving student debt and so forth, in the 70 to 75% range of popularity when they're polled.
Absolutely. You know, and that's going to be the final word. 20 states have said, Democratic voters have said overwhelmingly, we want Medicare for all. He's putting issues on the table that we want to have on the table. And now this is about not just winning the nomination, this is about having a say in the conversation, constructing the platform, everybody, the issues. I'm Santita Jackson. Stay over here on Facebook. Love you. Reverend Dyson, Dwight McKee. Oh, hearing you laugh, Dwight, just tickled me to no end. It was too rich. The sock puppet argument. Why why did that tickle you so? Because I mean, it felt like one. You mean one body given to a false argument, like that.
I could see the visual. It just took me back to Frank Oz or somebody. It was just amazing to me.
Oh my gosh! But you know what? But that really is. And AJ, I want to welcome you to the show. Because AJ, before we go back to Reverend Dyson and Dwight McKee, AJ, you want to talk about voter suppression from the Democrats? Talk to us.
Because I have some nieces in Texas and family in Dallas and nieces in Houston who were calling me enraged that the Democratic Party, that they believe, set up voter suppression by moving polling places around, diminishing the machines. And I heard that this is going on in the Latino community as well, not just in Texas, but I have a friend that I talked to in California who was saying that they believed the same thing was going on there, and there were a lot of provisional ballots being placed. So what I'm saying is that, saying that to say that you can't you can't fool the young people these days like you used to be able to. The Democratic Party, they are desperately trying to keep Biden in front, and people are looking at this, and they're saying, on one hand, you're talking about you want truth and justice and righteousness for the people, but you're not. The Democratic establishment is not doing that. So their actions and their words don't match. And it's going to be hard to try to bring young people into the process when they're looking at hypocrisy in your actions. And not, yeah, I'm not saying you're saying that the Democratic establishment. It rubs me the wrong way when I hear Jim Clyburn and James Carville talk about trying to protect Biden by shutting everything down now. They know the man is weak. And if he becomes the nominee, I predict Trump is going to use him as a chew toy. And it's not going to be pretty. Because Biden is not a strong candidate. He's not, his record will show you. And when you're talking about information is so important. And I feel that the people in the South are not getting the same information that the people in the North are getting. And the people in the North are not getting the whole truth. And I've witnessed that from traveling around the country. When you go to hotels, most of the hotels in the South, you can't get CNN or MSNBC. You can get Fox for free, no problem. So the information is, I mean, we really need more information so that we can discuss what I really admire you guys discussing history. Because when you don't have the facts and you don't discuss history, it's easy to forget. And when you forget, you're bound to make the same mistakes over and over and over. So I'm not for this Democratic establishment, and I hate to see that how they use Jim Clyburn to manipulate this whole thing, because it is a manipulation, and he's just an innocent bystander being used to accomplish what the Democratic the oligarchs want. Joe Biden, his record doesn't show that he's been a progressive person. It shows that he'll flip-flop, he'll run to the Republican side faster than he'll run to the side of progressive. So, like I said, if Joe Biden gets in, they already know he's weak. That's why they're going through all these changes, trying to cover up for him.
Well, you know what? I will say this. Stay right there, AJ, because I want you, given Dwight McKee and Reverend Marcia Dyson a lot to respond to. I will say this as you do respond. First, you, Reverend Dyson, and then you, Dwight McKee. I would not paint Congressman Clyburn, for whom I have a lot of respect, whether I agree with his politics or not, because he's far more moderate than I, because I'm really a progressive. I have so much respect for him. And my grandmother, by the way, Reverend Dyson and Dwight McKee, loved Congressman Clyburn to death. And she was, of course, a South Carolinian until her death. That having been said, he's not an innocent. He's a very shrewd politician who is in the establishment. And power protects itself. See, I think we're new. My mother has often said, Reverend Dyson, when in my moments when I am frustrated and angered, she'll say, wait a minute. She and my father say the same thing. We're new to this power dance. We've not been here before. And so we have been, we just got the right to vote, she said, in your lifetime. In your lifetime. So when Reverend got us in the power. I mean, just it moved us into power because those were the headlines on in Newsweek and Time when he was when the thought of him running for president in 1983 was out there. Because remember, AJ, he did not want to run. He felt that Maynard Jackson, the mayor of Atlanta, the former mayor of Atlanta at that time, and Andrew Young, they were far more establishment, and he said they would do better because I'm so black. Not that they were not, but he was recognized at that time as the chief black spokesman. He said, "No, I'm not mainstream enough. They have run cities. Andrew Young has been the UN ambassador. He's been a congressman." At that point, Reverend had been President Carter's chief surrogate. President Carter was so unpopular by 1980 that the person who became his top surrogate was Reverend Jackson. So he got a chance to see presidential politics like up close and personal. And as they were walking out of the White House one day, because at that point they had these all access passes, which enabled him to go in and out of the White House at any time. And as he was walking out with, and of course you remember him, this man, Reverend Dyson and Dwight McKee, Lamond Godwin, who was an undersecretary of labor and who was one of my father's fraternity brothers. They were walking out of the White House having spoken with Hamilton Jordan, you remember them, and Jody Powell and all these people. I can't believe I'm pulling up these names. And they were sitting with the president strategizing how he could win because Reverend had to go out through the South and through the country and speak for him because he couldn't even leave the White House. That's how unpopular he'd become. And he looked at his fraternity brother and he said, "Wow, homeboy, can you believe we're advising the president on how to keep his office, how he can keep the White House?" And Lamond Godwin looked at my father and said, "Homeboy, but he still got the keys." Never, ever, ever forgot that. And so I think we have to just, understand how new we are to this power game, to this power dance. And there's a lot that we're learning about how power behaves. And a lot of us, we're not a monolith, AJ. Some of us are actually moderates. Black people are far more moderate than we are progressive. We've just had to go with progressives because they were more willing to fight with us for freedom than, conservatives ever were. So, stay right there, AJ, because I want you to interact with Reverend Dyson and Dwight McKee. Reverend Dyson, your thoughts about everything we've been talking about.
It's to listen to the conversation, which I feel, again, like a student, is that I think our problem is that we have so much more information than the average citizen do not. And that is definitely one of the problems. Yeah. And when I think about the history that you spoke about and the fact that they no longer really teach civic courses in a public school system, so I won't say we don't have to believe that we have an ignorant voter base, but we do have a frail voter base. I was supposed to speak for a women's group called the Value Women of the Vote, and I read them something that one of the women in, I think it was 1893, Frances Ellen Watkins Harper said that, what we need today is not more voters, but more informed voters. This was in 1893, and I'm saying, like, darn, we really do need to have this information so that people will vote their interest, it's only vote their interest, but also know when we talk about the thing with Bernie, which people don't feel that burn, is that they feel comfortable with the norm, right? You have democratic socialism and how it impacts other countries' life to determine whether his things could be a go or not in the United States is questionable. You have very moderate conservative black people, which we basically are. We're definitely the most moderate. And though we have progressives like, my husband Michael, who's on the Biden team, and Cornel West, who's with Bernie, that we have more information than the average folks. I think every day, if I don't do anything with my young mentees, is try to get them more engaged and listen to shows like yours, Santita, and to give them information for the history that I've learned from your father, from reading the books, having access to that kind of leadership that would not have us ignorant. about these things. I think that when of course, Clyburn, right, is shrewd. I never will forget, I always tell people that the most textile sport is politics.
Mm-hmm.
And we become those who are into sports, football, I don't know a lot about the place, but basketball I do, so it engaged me more as a fan and as a spectator. And I think that when we're talking about the next electoral process, or even now, I'm pushing for more education, more information to the masses to make not so much an educated decision, because that would be based on your trajectory through higher institutions of education, but just to have that kernel of knowledge that we get from the guests that you had on your show today. And that, to me, is a great lamentation that they don't have access to that, because we live in an era of immediate gratification, with especially the young people, though they're pushing Bernie. But why are they pushing Bernie? Are they the young people with Bernie because he set with Cardi B? I think that has a lot to do with that. And it's not because Bernie just resonates with them. It's the free stuff, because we've made a lot of these children lethargic about their future. They feel like they should everything should be given to them. Millennials have the fastest turnover ever in employment. So is he feeding into that? So is it he has that vote because most of them, I won't say most of them, but you got a lot of lazy young people? I think that has a lot to deal with it too. It's not so much he's beating the drum on what he's saying. You say free stuff and they're going to run. You say free, I say move. And that's dangerous too, in my estimation. So I'm just sitting back and saying, like, wow, these are strange times. But on the spiritual tip, I think about the necessity that at any given point in any civilization's history, you have a major upheaval, right? Our arms, that this coronavirus is teaching us, our arms are too short to box with God, and, through our natural disasters, the same. And when this political season, I'm thinking this upheaval is saying, let's sit back and, like, we're trying to study the vaccines for this virus. This is an opportunity for great study and great information to be disseminated to the masses based upon not the personalities, not just the climate of what we're facing now, but what is real politics in this 21st century and how it can be utilized in a way that is digestive to the masses, so we can make informed decisions that we cannot properly make as a mass, because you just don't have it. Every time I watch one of these night shows that they like to make fun of our university students, somebody's on a campus and asking them a fifth grade question, and they give a kindergarten or pre-K answer, I cringe, And so I know I'm just thinking out loud, but Santita, I'm just glad that you have your show, and we'll try to get more people to listen to it. But I think that we are not in so much a dire time, but in another possible reawakening and another renaissance as it relates to politics, if it's done properly. That's the reason why I don't agree with Claiborne saying stop the process if Bernie sweeps. I think that people who have been engaged, especially the young people, do remember 2016. We cannot have the instant citizenry and expect for our country to move forward, whether they're in the Democrat Party or not. You cannot have those masses be unwilling to become not open-hearted, but become more recalcitrant in their thinking and being, that we will never not be, forget Trump. Trump, come hell or high water, will be out in 4 years, even if we don't, clear him out of here in 2020. You know what I mean? So that's my mindset right now.
Well, Dwight McKee, what do you feel? Because I have to tell you, I don't think that young people, I will say this, I don't think they're responding to Bernie. I mean, because I'm no longer young. I'm youthful, but I'm not young. I'm not responding to Bernie Sanders because of free stuff. Because I don't think that anything in life is ever free. I think, though, that we need to expand our sense of what the education that our children have access to. It shouldn't be K through 12. I think it should be K through 16. And we've got a lot of kids. I mean, where our children are in terms of their thinking, it's not just their fault. We have people who are as untalented as they can be, who become stars overnight. That's being pushed. That's not an agenda that they're pushing. I mean, bless the Kardashians, bless them. But what are they famous for? Nothing. and they get pushed. Well, I mean, I'm just saying this is a society that we're living in. I don't even see great musicians on the Grammys anymore. I have visions of hell. I see them shooting up fire and all these crazy whatever they have going on these award shows. It's just something is spiritually really off here because the most talented people can't get a record deal, and some of the most untalented people um, are in the forefront of our minds singing songs that I cannot even remember. I mean, something's real off here. But let me go to you, Dwight McKee, because I want us to engage each other because I think it's not just young people who are appealing to Bernie Sanders because the the polls show that he's the most popular senator in the United States. I mean, he is that. So, but Dwight McKee.
What's your question?
Well, my question is, where are we politically? I mean, because AJ was making the point that he sees some voter suppression from the Democrats. Well, I think you have to be very clear. The Republicans have set voter suppression in motion. They're the best at it. There's a book that we brought the author on this show several times, David Daley, Rat Effed. And three of the top Republican operatives, Ed Gillespie, Karl Rove, and one other person, said, okay, the day after President Obama won, they said, look, he can have the presidency, but what we need is the U.S. Senate, U.S. House of Representatives, the state legislatures, both houses, and the governorships. Then we can control America. And we promptly lost more than 1,000 seats because of because of what they set in motion.
Well, I would preface that by saying that the Republicans want to hold on to the seats of power in the executive branch. They seek to make sure they keep the presidency. They seek to make sure that they also, in the Justice Society, keep the judges. And they seek to, at some levels, make sure that they hold on to some of the legislative by getting some of these governors and senators and congressmen in. But I think that the DNC seeks to hold on to power at the political level. I think that they have a vested interest in maintaining the power dynamic in controlling that party and the people who emerge from that party. And they have their own interests and their own motives. No, I don't think Clyburn is an innocent bystander. I think he's a willing participant because there's a payoff for him, and that is his seat. I think that Bernie is not an innocent bystander. I think he's complicitous. And when they seek to protect him, they're protecting him not just from the process, they're protecting him from his own history and his own record and the things that he would have a hard time explaining, not just to Trump, but things he had a hard time explaining to Bernie. You have to explain the crime bill. You have to explain busing. You have to explain you jumping back and forth on health care.
Oh,
and
you talking about Biden? Biden, yeah.
You have to explain trying to cut Social Security. And so I think part of them trying to shut down the process is trying to protect him from his own history because they have a vested interest in maintaining power and control over that party. There's a lot of residual. There's a lot of reward that comes with having control over that party and that process. The DNC is a private corporation that makes big money from their relationship with the PACs and their relationship with candidates that can raise $1 billion, and their relationship with the vendors and the contractors. And so I don't think that a lot of purists in this process, including the Democrats, to be honest with you. That's what I see.
And and I think that people are discussing it because more and more people, I think Dwight McKee and Reverend Dyson, they're mistrustful, they're distrustful. And I have to say, I'm not an innocent because you know, Reverend almost got the nomination. So there's a lot that, you know, that we did see, a lot that we did learn. And that having been said, I'm still very hopeful because I know, AJ, that you got to stay in the fight no matter what. Because, you know, even I think one of the things that Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King was doing, Reverend Dyson and Dwight McKee, was helping us to change power, change the nature of, not the nature of power, but what it's supposed to look like, what it's supposed to be like, right? You know, what are we going to do with this military industrial complex? What are we going to do about poverty? What are we going to do about our value system? And that's where I am on this, you know, because essentially, Reverend, my mother, and my brothers, my sister, and I were church people. And you know that, Dwight McKee, you know that, Reverend Dyson. And so, you know, I know we went as far as we could go in politics because we're political, but we're not politicians. That's, you know, and that's just, it is what it is. So I think I see our role as people who try to shape the discussion and help to shape the values. And I mean, that's just where I am with it. But you hear, AJ, and Reverend, I speak with friends of mine who, like me, the first time I voted was for Reverend Jackson. And I remember when he was on a show on Chris Rock's old show, and Reverend came out, sat with him, and he stopped for a minute. He said, "You know what? I can't believe I'm talking to you. I just want you to know that when I voted for you, my vote meant something. I mean, I actually voted for someone whose stances were like mine, who was speaking for me, who was speaking as me. It meant something." And I think those of us who are in that age range, and quite frankly, those of us who remain idealistic, not foolish, but idealistic, who have great ideas and high ideals, we want something else. I do believe that I think Vice President Biden you all need to have a fireside chat with him about busing, because Senator Ed Brooke lost his seat over that, trying to save busing, trying to save Brown versus Board of Education. He needs to talk about Anita Hill. He does. And this is before we get to the fall, not to excoriate him and take him over the coals. No, I want you to explain your positions. I want to know why you became a Democrat at the age of 27. You're not a lifelong Democrat. Unlike my father, you could vote at 18. All right? So I want you to explain those things, because even as Elizabeth Warren was a Republican, and so was Hillary Clinton, I'm not upset about that. Tell me about your evolution. Because Reverend Dyson, Dwight, AJ, we all evolve in our thinking. Some political positions I held, you know, when I first started voting, I don't have them anymore. Because, you grow, you evolve, right?
I mean, this whole thing is not a tempest in a teapot, Santita, at all. When you talk about needing to sit down and talk about that, I think that what American citizens really desire is truth from their leadership, just as they would expect.
Absolutely.
Out of the mouth of their ministers in the pulpit, and how they will expel them if that untruths are revealed. When I talk about the free stuff and the young people, and you don't think that they're going, for Bernie because of that, in a way it is, because, since I work in African countries, and especially when I work in Brazil.
Anyway, and let me just say this, to be fair, you speak as a wife, a mother, and a grandmother. So you see some things, quite frankly, as a wife, a mother, and a grandmother, that I'm not a wife and I'm not a mom. You understand what I'm saying? So I just wanted to be fair to you, that you have a perspective that I do not have.
In Brazil, they have the university. But my friend is Paulo Coelho, the famous author who wrote the book The Alchemist.
Yes.
And one thing that Paulo Coelho does with his royalties from his million sold sales of his book is that in a favela in Rio de Janeiro, he pays for every child living in that favela to have health care, their education, their food, their clothing, so that these mostly Afro-Brazilian children living in the favela in Rio de Janeiro can have access to free university. Because he said if they have inferior elementary and secondary education, the poor people are paying for the middle class and upper class Brazilian citizen youth to go to university. And I'm not hearing that. And I try to tell some of the candidates that you talk about great, going on to free university, but what if Jamila and Jamal haven't been qualified for university or even community school? You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So the conversation for me using, that example from Paulo Coelho and what he did in understanding Brazil free university is not even talked about here. Most of the black children are failing because of the deterioration of their schools, the lack of enthusiasm from the teachers because they're not paid. And let me tell you something about the Medicaid for all. My son is a physician, and unless you're talking about giving doctors free education, he is still paying, and he is 48 years old, his medical tuition.
And you know what? And that is wrong. Mm-hmm. And see, and that's what I'm talking, when I talk about education, Reverend Dyson, I'm talking about investing in people. Because my sister, one of your mentees, who got her PhD a few years ago in education, and she does international education policy. This is about investing in our young people and investing. When I was about 14, I think you were working at Push then. I went over to Denmark for about 4 months or so with a very dear family friend, with Dr. Von Winbush. And he was a researcher over there. I went with his wife and his daughter, and I was able to see some things, Dwight McKee and AJ and Reverend Dyson, that I didn't know what I was looking at the time. They were talking about healthcare. What did I know about healthcare? My parents took care of all of that, right? Well, it was explained to me that if I got sick over there, that I'd be able to go to the hospital. It was explained to me that if I lost my job, that they had programs in their country to re-educate you so that you could move into another profession. It's, and when Jackie got there, 30 plus years later, my sister, when she was studying their systems in pursuit of her PhD, she said, when I turn on the radio here, I can learn French, I can learn English, I can learn Spanish, I can learn Dutch, I can learn all of these languages. I can even take a math class by listening to the radio, because they have all of these programs that I just have access to, so that I can develop my mind, because they know that they need an educated populace. And I'm saying, as we think of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, and we do so much in his name, let's really do things in his name. He was talking about having a revolution of values, an evolution of values, so that we would develop whole people. And we've got to do that. That's why as Reverend Jackson historically has fought for access to equal high quality education, he also would go into the schools and give inspirational sermons and talks. You know that, Reverend Dyson. You helped organize so many of them years ago, decades ago. Because he knew that we had a broken people as well, and you had to inspire. You had to put the spirit back in our people. I yield the floor.
Well, the difference between capitalism and socialism is who gets paid. If the poor pays from the bottom up, if the poor pays and the money goes to the rich, it's enlightened capitalism. If it goes from the rich down to the poor, then it's socialism. It really is who gets the money is decide what form of government you call it. And so it makes us so susceptible to the okie-doke, because when the money comes to us, to the poor, as socialism, somehow it's stigmatized. And when the money same money goes from the poor to the rich, it becomes enlightened capitalism, is glorified. And so it subjects us to more manipulation than any other people. And I think that's what Bernie is right now a victim of, is that when he tries to negotiate in behalf of the poor, they call him a socialist. He calls himself a democratic socialist. And he's stigmatized. And they tell black people, this is, guys, not for you, even though he's fighting your best interest and fighting against people that exploit you. And so I think we have to be very conscious and very careful of the okie-doke. And that's what part of education does for us. is to keep us informed and keep us in the light, which is why it's so dangerous. Is why they fight to keep us so uneducated, so we don't know out of our own interest.
Could I answer that?
Yep.
AJ, please go on.
Okay, who is that?
Oh, this is AJ, one of our callers. You know, we open up the after show, Reverend Dyson. You know, sometimes our callers stay on, and you know, we not let them. It's their show. They jump on in. Go on, AJ.
Okay. That this touches on another point that I've noticed. I've been in the music industry all my life, and I've noticed something about radio. And I went to school to be in radio, but I've noticed something with the black stations and the white stations, the contrast, and what he was just saying about the information and education. On our stations, we have too much buffoonery. Oh, yeah. And we're laughing about things that make no sense. We're discussing things on our radio that make no sense. And we've been programmed to these kinds of things, socialized. It's been presented to us. Well, we have no choice. We have VON, a talk radio. We need more. We have your show. We need, Santita, we need more information. We don't need more comedy. We don't need more buffoonery. We don't need the distractions. Because what's happening here is that this society is slowly caving in on itself. And all empires eventually fall. We don't want to be caught up in this. We want to be prepared. We have to be prepared to pick up the pieces and recover from this. And the way things are going, it's like we're just being happy as we're being involved in our own demise. And I don't like it. In my family, we grew up with the understanding that it's better to die standing up fighting than it is to live crawling on your knees. And I think that the information that I've been hearing on your show today, we need that to be everywhere. We need the education, we need the history, so that we can make informed decisions about what we're doing. So I just want to add that. Thank you.
We have to clamor for that, because when you look at, you talk about the award shows that they have, the music awards that they have, and I think about all the young talent that exist, and you never see them getting those awards. It's like a lazy Susan on the table that they just circulate the same people on different award platforms. The one thing that I miss, in addition to, the strong information and the community activation that comes out of Chicago, and what Push has done and continues to do with your father's voice in this show, is the new awakening, in addition to your father's footprint on this trajectory, was Tavis Malley's Save the Black Union,
which I miss desperately. We need to do that again.
No, I'm doing that, and I'm setting that up now, because you walked away, and you know this, Santita, because I think you attended some of those. You walked away not with what people said. It wasn't the politicians. It was the people. It was the community people. It was the church people. It was the real grassroots people. You walked away with a notebook. I just pulled it out the other day, full of information, so that you could read it. You had the statistics. It wasn't like a primer book, see Dick Run. It was a PhD of information at your touch of your hand. And that's what propelled us to get Obama into the White House, because people were informed, not because of him, but they had more information. Of course, yes, the Black Pride was part of that, but he enabled for Tom Joyner to be more relevant, because we were interacting with Tom Joyner at the time. And so you see, you don't get that sort of messaging anymore on AM radio. You got Steve Harvey, who can't even do I'm not talking about it, I'm not using ad hominem, You can't even be a host of an international pageant and get shit. I'm sorry, that's irreverent, Marcy. I get stuff right, okay? So we really do need that kind of platform again, and that's why, Santita, I was telling you that during the DNC, I don't care who's there, we need to have that. Maybe before that, Santita. Remember, I talked about let's do that sort of State of the Black Union thing. We need that and to carry that around because at the end of the day, you're going to have a groom on the cake called the presidency. The important thing is if the bride, which is everybody who has to pay homage to that groom, and the groom could be a female if women were still in the race. But anyway, the wedding party must be informed. We must know why we are attending the wedding, using that analogy. And that to me is what is missing. Because how do you get the information to the people if they are part of the information? AJ, I mean, I thought you were a guest. I guess I missed that or something because you're informed. And where do we get that information from people who have it? I studied world economics and had a great tutor just following Perry Mitchell. You don't have that anymore, And also, the only thing I do with Biden, and I kind of tease it out, is that you can't say you hate billionaires and you're a billionaire platform talking your stuff because we wouldn't know you if it wasn't for social media, to the point to which young people do know Bernie. Because they're all on Zuckerberg and all these other social media platforms who are owned by billionaires. And I don't totally agree and I want to be a billionaire. I want to pay my share of the taxes, but Black people are just now being able to come rose with a gun. We have a wealth legacy that we can obtain through entrepreneurship. And as Robert F. Smith said, the information technology is the new frontier for the advancement of wealth, especially to Black people, because we are still behind the 8 ball when it comes to the advancement to allow more billionaires to exist that are not from the people of the lower class. And Black people collectively, we have done more for ourselves and for our community than any government ever have. So I don't need Bernie to come and save us, because I know at the end of the day, we have saved ourselves because we're very generous to one another. Our churches have saved us. So I don't buy into the notion of just democratic socialism. I believe in the heart of the Black people who got us that far, that still exist, but we need to tap into that more. Nipsey Hussle was on the road to teaching young Black people about entrepreneurship. And I think that jealousy of not being a hood dog anymore is what possibly got him killed in some form or fashion, keeping up with youth culture. So it's such a complex time, but in the midst of adversity is a great opportunity for us to educate, to disseminate information, and to revive a spirit that has become calcitrant and unmoving in this era, because the whole Bernie and the Biden and even with Hillary and Elizabeth Warren remind me of a school ground bullying fight, and that's not good. And to your point, AJ, the sun has set on the British Empire, right? Rome did burn, right? The decolonization of Africa is still in the process. Black people are being called back home and being apologized by the Africans who helped enslave them because they wanted to tell the truth, right? So it's not only the politicians, it's platforms into which we can hear the truth, because this is when the church ritual called testimonies come in, that people are overcome by the testimony of their word, which must be a truth and verifiable truth, right? And this word, and not the spiritual word of the gospel, but of the things that are important to the people, so that if you say I'm getting something that's free, and we know the taxpayer money is really paying for it, it's ultimately not free, because even air basically now is not free. Water is not free. And so taxpayers will be affording, and that language has to be, to me, detailed so folks don't get duped, because that's why the other side, like I feel like, I think it was Kendrick Lamar saying this ish ain't free. Right, so that, and I think that's the confusion, especially for moderates. If they talk in the language in which I explained what Paulo Coelho did and nuance it, like how can we navigate it? Just who gets the free university? Will it help the people who are the least educated? Because free university and you're uneducated, you're not going to qualify. And know what is the criteria for that? There must be some criteria when you talk about democratic socialism.
Well, but I think But Reverend Dyson, I think that you do have criteria, because we can look at what happened in Cuba, which is where my grandmother used to work in the 30s and 40s as a child. And you remember my grandmother Gertrude, God rest her soul. She died 3 years ago. Come this summer, and she didn't say much about her background because she grew up. She was orphaned at 12, and she became a mother at 14. She had a lot of pain. She was by herself a lot until she got a family and then married and really stabilized. Um, Remember when we were fighting to get Elian Gonzalez home to his father after he and his mother made the journey to the United States and his mother died on that journey. I remember watching my brother, who was in Congress at the time, have a very gentle discussion. That's really what it was with Gloria Estefan. And she, of course, felt that Elian needed to stay here. And my brother respectfully said he needs to go home to his father. And I remember my grandmother standing there watching the television silently and going down to the kitchen. I was in Washington visiting my parents. And she said, people can say a lot of things about Castro. She said, but when I was a little girl and when I was working there, she was a migrant worker as a child. She said, we were little more than slaves then. And that just kind of, you know, Dwight and AJ and Reverend Dyson, it hit me in my gut because unlike my father's mother, because of what my mother's mother looked like, she was a very dark-skinned woman. She looked like she was from the west coast of Africa, big gap in her teeth. She wouldn't have had my grandmother, my father's mother would have had a very different set of social options. Reverend Dyson, let's just keep it real, right? And my grandmother, they were very opposite in their looks. And it hit me and it hurt me but what Castro was able to do, and nobody's perfect, but he was able to take the least literate nation in the hemisphere and make it the most literate. And he also put a doctor on every corner, people that he educated. One of the finest medical educations in the world that you can get is still in Cuba. And so I think, we have to reframe this discussion because I'll tell you, I think Jonathan, one of your little godchildren, my brother, said this. We need to raise the floor of the standard of living for Americans, not lower the ceiling for innovation and wealth creation, which kind of mitigates the whole millionaire, billionaire discussion because, just because I support Senator Sanders doesn't mean that I go, oh, I take all of that. No, I take that and then I'm like, look, people want to be millionaires. Some people want to be billionaires. I'm going to leave that alone. But what I want to eliminate is poverty, right? So let me stay there on that. What I want is equal access to equal high quality education for everybody. How about that? How about us having an education system? Because rich folks get a lot of things for free. They get my money for free when they mess up their money. Mm-hmm. They don't even have to pay it back. Come on. Because they socialize their losses and they privatize their wins. Mm-hmm. So I'm just saying. I hear you, Bernie, and he's speaking like, a white progressive, and he's being very purist about it. I get it. And he's got a lot of six-figure socialists, as my friends call it, around him. I get it. And so I hear y'all, and it's like my mother said, remember, now I know you remember this, Dr. Dyson, Reverend Dyson, when they started throwing the paint on women who were wearing fur coats. Oh, wait, my mother said, oh, now that I can wear a fur coat, you got a problem with it? Ha!
I was thinking about the other day, but you know what I do? I used to tell people, I said, well, a suicidal mink, I got the suicide notes, right? That, the pets going crazy over fur and step over homeless people when I lived in New York City on Riverside Drive.
Did you hear what you just said? See the inconsistency there? So I'm just saying people have a lot of inconsistencies. That having been said, I think that we have to, and I think that you have every right to look at Bernie and go, huh? No. And I, and I have a right to look at Biden and go, huh? I got it. But what we have to do is let this fight go on to.
And the Super Tuesday is important because as far as this conversation with it, the unrest begs for questions to be answered, but more importantly, like we're doing now, and I'm listening to everybody, it makes us think a little bit even deeper and go back and let me check this thing out, what she just said, right?
Yeah.
And that's what's the good about debate. That's what's good about having tensions. And that's what's good about the democracy into which we supposedly live in and the better to which we're supposed to embrace.
Well, and that's why I have AJ, and my listeners who, when we do the after show, they're part of it because they're part of the show. They're part of the conversation. I don't want to just speak about you. I want to speak with you, and give you a place where you can speak. And so I just, I think that we've got to have conversations. We've got to have conferences. We've got to talk with one another. And that's why I'm so grateful to WCPT initially for giving me this platform, and now Talk 1017 out of Milwaukee. So you're going to have to come and do my show when we're up in Milwaukee at the convention. Come on. Come on.
Santita, too. I'm coming back to Chicago to invest back in my property in South Shore in the shadows of your family's home that when I live down the street. And while I'm talking to you, I'm talking to my sister to run over and look at that property for me. I'm coming back to Chicago.
You better come on back to Chicago. Come on back here. Well, but there's a lot. The soil here is rich, and that's why I'm excited about the convention. I'm excited about kicking the can down the road as we get closing thoughts from all of you, because it is important for us to have one of the great gifts of Bernie Sanders' campaign has been putting Medicare for all in the center of the discussion. And I say that as someone who's had some medical bills. I'm not a disinterested party here. I mean, I look at the woman who had strep throat just a couple of months ago. I put her in my headlines, and we talked about her, Lady B.
Mm-hmm.
I came across this story. Reverend Dyson, Dwight McKee, and AJ. She had a $28,000 bill. She said, whoa, wait. I just had strep throat. I went to the doctor. That's all I did. And then I took my medicine because, strep throat is very painful. And then she got this bill for $28,000. What happened? If you're out of network and you get a test, you get a throat culture, and then they pass it along and you're out of network, you get charged for that. Your insurance company will not pay for that. And you have these people going to the hospital for the coronavirus. They're getting these 5-figure hospital bills. And even when you have private insurance, which I do have, so what? That's not working for me. And I am tired of politicians, all of them, except Bernie, making a case for the private insurance industry. It's not working. It's not working for Americans. And I think it doesn't mean you need to throw the baby out with the bathwater, that is throw out a candidate. But the candidate, you can move a candidate. You have to make them work for you. You don't dance to their, no, you're the one. The easy girl loses in the courtship game, okay? They need your vote. You don't know. They need your vote. And you need to act like they need you and make them court you.
Mm-hmm.
And make them move the needle. AJ, I'm going to give everyone your final thoughts before we get out of here. Dwight, you last. AJ, you first. Reverend Dyson, and then Dwight McKee.
I just think it's very interesting that whenever politicians talk about giving something to the people, the question comes of how we're going to pay for it. But we never think about that. That question never pops up when it's time to make bombs to drop on other folks, to take money from the people by giving tax breaks to the rich. They never talk about, the question never comes up, how we're going to pay for it. But every time the people, are going to benefit from something, that's the question. And I think that we need to address and put out front.
Well, reframe. Wait a minute, AJ. Stay right there. I'm going to let you continue. We're the ones who have the power to reframe the discussion. When they tell you that Bernie's unelectable, you say, by what standard? The only person that Trump really fears, according to news reports, is Bernie. Because he said, wait, no, I cannot run. It's hard to run against a movement. And how dare you call someone unelectable? And you need to ask who the pundits are who are on television. Who are you working for? Many of these people are working for different campaigns or different think tanks that favor different candidates and policies. We have the power to change that, to change the conversation. We're not powerless. You start writing emails, start making some phone calls, AJ, and get your friends to do it. because every phone call, every email stands for X number of viewers or voters. Trust and believe. Okay?
Basically, what you're saying it reminds me that a lot of us in the black community are living in intellect deserts. That a lot of our people just have no clue of what really happened.
That's true.
So I try to do what I can to spread information to get people to be aware of things. And that's why I try to tune into conversations where information is being discussed like this your show. So thank you.
You made me feel, what did Mahalia say at Newport? You make me feel like a star. Reverend Dyson.
So, I was going to say that I really did enjoy this conversation. It revived my spirit, and it gives me hope when you can have dialogue, and know that people out there are thinking. And I know it's not just us, but we need to get these people in the room, and we need to get those other masses in the room as well, so they can have the information that we have, so that collectively we can think intelligently. Just as we say that Bernie doesn't have all the answers, and he gives us pregnant pauses, neither has Biden birth in totality to be able to deliver what we think the masses might need based upon his own history. But we have to allow for the clearance of that history in a forgiving moment, while people thinking that he's the one who, for no other reason, could beat Trump. But I don't buy that sort of narrative alone. And finding ways to revive that state of the Black Union, which right at this point is not about the state of the Black Union, it's just the state of the Union, reviving that opportunity for people to dialogue more, rather than if people who are part of the pageantry of politicians who want to be able to get in the seats of power, who often forget why they are in that space anyway.
Dwight McKee?
Ditto. I think that Marcia and the brother was right on point. I think it's a crucial time. I think that crucial times call for critical involvement. And I think that we commit the sin to ourselves and our ancestors if we just let this thing ride and not take the opportunity to raise significant questions and to impose our will on a process that we are paramount in. I think that many voices all need to be heard, not just Bernie's, not just Biden's, but Warren has a crowd, and Corey has a crowd, and there are different voices that all need to be heard, and we need to battle through the process. And whatever comes out on the other side of it, then we all can support, but at least everybody says an input. I think the show plays an important role in giving people information and giving people history. We're fortunate in that many of us were there. We were involved in the process. The Franks and the Marcias, the you and the me's and the Reverend Jacksons. And so we have, memory and experience. Most people don't have that. They need a way to be brought into the history and the process. And I think this show provides an ample opportunity for that to happen.
Well, I thank you for that, and that's why, we work very hard to get this show up every day, always looking for the information and trying to bring people like you, Dwight, like you, Reverend Marcia Dyson. So many more people need to know you and who you are, both of you, and AJ, because this is all for you, and it's all for Mateo, my intern. How old are you, Mateo?
22.
You're 22? There's so much that he's 22, and there's so much that he walks away from the show many days and says, I didn't know that. Yeah. And wow. I mean, right?
Yeah.
You say
most
that?
Definitely.
Okay, and so we have an obligation to share and to let you know. That's why I'm like, look, I've said this to you, and when you called me this week, and I think I can say this without saying too much more, hey, you support Vice President Biden, Reverend, and I know our family, we support Bernie Sanders. And when we talked, it was like, okay, and next, I still love you. I'm not gonna lose. I'm not gonna lose a friend over this. Someone I've known all my life. I'm not gonna do that. We're not gonna do that. And we don't do that. Knowing, we were trained, Reverend Dyson and Dwight, to talk to people all over the board. We have talked to Chuck Percy and Dick Durbin and McGovern and Rockefeller and everybody, because what we're trying to do is move this. We're trying to move the needle and get our goals accomplished. We have to stay right there on that. That's why I don't have these fights with black conservatives. Look, what does that mean? I mean, we're conservative in many, 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 many ways, and we also have a lot of differences of opinion. But what we cannot differ on is where we need to go, and what it is that we need to achieve, and what we need for ourselves and what we need for our children. We need to do that. What we cannot differ on, we cannot forget, Dwight McKee, the words of Reverend James Bevel, who lamented the deterioration, the spiritual and cultural degradation and deterioration that he foresaw 40 plus years ago. He saw it. Dr. King saw it, which is why on principle, Reverend said, I've got to go with Bernie Sanders. Not only was he with our campaigns in 84 and 88, his platform is almost a mirror image of our platform. That having been said, doesn't mean that I can't support Biden down the road, but I tell you what, he's going to have to answer some questions for me. He's going to have to do more. He's got to give me deliverables. You can't just look at me when black people continue to deliver the vote for you and you just smile. No. You need to talk to me, because I still have a question about Ed Brooke, who lost his seat when he needed you, when we needed you, because I'm part of Kamala Harris' generation. She's just a year behind me at Howard. Okay? So busing and desegregation, we lived through that. And you opposed that. I need you to talk to me about that. Period. You need to explain that. Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think, and take that to him, because if I had him on the show, I'd be very respectful, but I would ask him about that. Anita Hill, there's some issues I've got, but there's some issues that we can have. Wherever we have our issues with people, let us be respectful, everybody. If I can just give you that as we walk away. Let us be kind. Let us be respectful. Get on the other side of what you say about someone, about what you accuse someone of being. If you keep on living long enough, everything that you say about someone, good or ill, you'll be the recipient of that. Think about how that feels. So I'm not trying to impugn anyone's motives. No, I'm not trying to impale you on a cross. But I do know that if you need my vote, you must answer in the affirmative certain questions for me. Period. Because I am not cheap. I cost. Mm-hmm. My vote costs. And I have something called self-respect. You don't just walk up to me and smile and tell, no, I'm not cheap. And I live in a home, not on a corner. And that's not to disrespect people who live on the corner and who have to work on the corner, if you know what I mean. Because you know what, some people run out of options. But even they will trade their work for money. Now, hey, come on.
Because I saw on social media there was a white guy dressed in a purple suit and a leopard hat talking about he was a homeless pimp. And he lost all his horns due to the economy. So you're right.
I'm just, Dr. Reverend Dyson, that's all I'm saying. Look, the thing is, every group in America, it costs you to get their support. Jewish Americans have a list of lines that you cannot cross. You must come to them with certain deliverables, otherwise you do not get their support, and they make you feel it. And you can keep on going down the list. White women have a list of issues that you have got to affirm for them, otherwise you don't get their support, and they make you feel it. With black folks, just feel me. I ain't got time for that. I'm grown. Now, what I need you to do is you need to give me some deliverables. I need black colleges to be saved. We lost 28 to 40,000 students because of Parent Plus loans that were implemented in the last administration. That was wrong. I need that overturned. And that does not mean that I do not affirm, President Obama and love him. No. My mother loves me. She criticizes me every day. And you know, Reverend Dyson and Dwight McKee, you know that. Oh,
she makes me feel like I'm three.
I mean, all the time, but she makes you better, doesn't she?
As I was going to say, but she makes me a better woman. She makes me more thoughtful and reflective on a whole lot of things. I love her wisdom. The one time of when I did live in Chicago was sitting in that yard with her, you know, and just listening to her, and just wish that I had a microphone so the world could hear the wisdom of your mother. I mean, she's an unsung hero in so many ways. I kept saying, like, Miss Jackson, when are you going to write your book? And so everybody can know what I'm knowing. They can hear what I'm hearing, because I am a lot because of your family. I came from an apolitical, ahistorical family. I have learned so much. In fact, I checked the other day on my social media. I am because of Reverend Jackson. Politically, he made me a global citizen by allowing me to be the chief of staff of his International Trade Bureau. Mm-hmm. I hadn't traveled out of Chicago at that time, but he opened up the world, and now I'm all over the world because of his selecting me in that position, to meet Romeo Horton, to study the Caribbean and Africa and looking at things in a global perspective. That came out of not my education in university or something I could sit with my parents, because we didn't have it in our household. It's because I was there. And I had the privilege of being part of the Jackson family.
And you know, my parents didn't have it in their house. But you know what they did have? A vision. And without a vision, a people what? Perish. Because
we need to give them back the vision, Santita, and you're doing that with this show.
And a godly vision at that. Wait, you know, because we can see a lot of things. I want us to get back to God, everybody.
I am working on getting back to Chicago, and my real estate agent there just called me. So let me come back, okay?
I love you, everybody. It has been wonderful being with you today. AJ, you have been fabulous. You got to call back, AJ.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate the conversation. I appreciate the sources. You guys are great. Thank you.
And come on back to the show. All right. Dwight McKee, you know I love you. I love you, AJ. I love you, Dwight. I love you, Reverend Dyson. Love you, Mateo. Love you, Lady B. Okay, Lady B's ready to go. Okay. Love you all. See you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. God bless you, everybody.
God bless.